17:5, we read this: upon her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Now, it's a title because of the origin of its religion. At the Tower of Babel, or Babylon, man had his first united rebellion against Elohim. Babylon was the origin of all false religion that we have today. As opposed to being the bride of Messiah, which is Israel, due to its false religion, this empire is called the Whore of Babylon. It's a pseudo-religious system that's similar to the one described at the assembly in Thyatira, which we're not going to go there. It's Revelation 2:18 and 19, or 2:29. Easter is not of scriptural or Christian origin. Really, the roots of it are in what's called Ishtar, one of the titles of the Babylonian Queen of Heaven, by the way. She was a fertility goddess, and the fertility issue ties in with the traditions of Easter eggs and the Easter bunny. Others say the worship of Ishtar does not resemble Easter at all. Well, okay. The worship practices don't line up that well, but the Germanic goddess named Easter has a lot of similarities. The pagan origins of Christmas, they're well known throughout the world, disregarded by Christianity worldwide, and so that's not wrong. It doesn't really matter. I don't know, how could it possibly be wrong to give presents to your kid? Well, there are lots of problems with it. Because it does have, its practices are rooted in ancient pagan religions. Scripture is against it. That's the Easter there, that's an old Germanic goddess. And then Christmas, that's Yule time, and Yule is another pagan celebration. And that's intricately tied to Christmas. We read in Deuteronomy 12, the first 4 verses. These are the statutes and the judgments which you shall carefully observe in the land which Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, has given you to possess as long as you live on the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations whom you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree. You shall tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, burn their asherim with fire. You shall cut down the engraved images of their gods. You shall obliterate their name from that place. You shall not act like this toward Yahweh your Elohim. That's very funny. I still wanted to celebrate Christmas when I started following the Torah until I read that. That changed everything. Then we get the last 4 verses of Deuteronomy 12, starting at verse 29. When Yahweh your Elohim cuts off before you the nations which you are going in to dispossess, and you dispossess them and dwell in the land, beware that you're not ensnared to follow them after they're destroyed before you, and that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods, that I also may do likewise? You shall not behave thus toward Yahweh your Elohim. For every abominable act which Yahweh hates they've done for their gods, for they even burn their sons and daughters with fire to their gods. Whatever I command you, you shall be careful to do. You shall not add to nor take away from them. These pagan things are truly not irrelevant to the Elohim of Scripture. They can easily be researched on the internet or by any library book that specializes in this, about the pagan origins or the pagan ties to the religious rites of Christmas and Easter. The rosary is of pagan origin from ancient Babylon, known as prayer beads. No warrant in the word of Elohim to use the cross as a sacred symbol at all. Its origin came from the mystic Tau of the Chaldeans and the Ankh of the ancient Egyptians. Now that Ankh, you can see them holding their crosses there down by their sides. That's where it came from. It came from the letter T. It's the initial of the name of the god Tammuz. Messiah was actually crucified on a stake or beam. That's what the Greek word means. It's stauros, and it means stake, or like I said, beam. but it's translated as cross in most of the translations of the Brit Hadashah. Yeshua was likely nailed to a beam and hoisted up onto a tree, which made more sense to me. Paul states it was a tree in Galatians. Using censers and burning incense. Oh, there's your honk. It's in the ancient Egyptian carvings in stone and so forth. And you can see how Christian drawings and paintings and literature will show Jesus with a halo behind his head. It's almost like they're putting that honk together for you there. Using censers, burning incense in worship. That's another abomination. That came from the worship of Tammuz. And we find that in Ezekiel 8. Starting at verse 7, we read, "Then he brought me to the entrance of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. He said to me, Son of man, now dig through the wall. So I dug through the wall, and behold, an entrance. He said to me, Go in and see the wicked abominations that they are committing here. So I entered and looked, and behold, every form of creeping things and beasts and detestable things, with all the idols of the house of Israel, were carved on the wall all around. And standing in front of them were 70 elders of the house of Israel, with Jezaniah the son of Shaphan standing among them, each man with his censer in his hand, and the fragrance of the cloud of incense rising. Then he said to me, Son of man, do you see what the elders of the house of Israel are committing in the dark? Each man in the room of his carved images, where they say, Yahweh does not see us. Yahweh has forsaken the land. He said to me, Yet you will see greater abominations which they are committing. Then he brought me to the entrance of the gate of Yahweh's house, which were toward the north, and behold, women were sitting there weeping Tammuz. And he said to me, You see this, son of man? You will see still greater abominations than these. Now Tammuz, the Babylonian god of vegetation, Tammuz was an ancient nature deity worshipped in Babylonia. The god of agriculture and flocks, he personified the creative powers of spring. He was loved by the fertility goddess Ishtar, who, according to one legend, was so grief-stricken at his death she contrived to enter the underworld to get him back. According to another legend, she killed him and later restored him to life. These legends and his festival, which took place in the early spring, commemorating the yearly death and rebirth of vegetation, corresponded to the festivals of the Phoenician and Greek Adonis and the Phrygian Attis. The Sumerian name of Tammuz was Dumuzi. Now, the reasons for celebrating our major feasts when we do are many and varied. This comes from Catholic Life for the 90s. In general, however, it's true that many of them have at least an indirect connection with pre-Christian pagan feasts celebrated at about that same time of the year. Feasts centering around the harvest, the rebirth of the sun at the winter solstice, the renewal of nature in spring, and so on. The Catholic Church admits it. They admit it. They admit it. They're not fooling us. They're not trying to. Legend has it that Tammuz was killed by a wild boar when he was 40 years old. Islam points out that 40 days, a day for each year Tammuz had lived on the earth, were set aside to weep for Tammuz. So that's Ezekiel. By the way, how long does Lent last again? How many of y'all, aside from Deb, came from my wife, who came from a church that celebrated Lent? That's time of sadness. It's time of sadness. Oh, sad. You go to the Lent services. Just get you down. I don't know. In olden times, these 40 days were observed with weeping, fasting, and self-chastisement to gain the newest favor. So he would come forth from the underworld and cause spring to begin. This observance was known not only in Babylon, but also among the Phoenicians, Egyptians, Mexicans, and for a time even among the Israelites. Most church organizations, perhaps unknowingly, dedicate themselves to worship of the sun and even worshiping on the day of the sun. We can continue that passage in Ezekiel and see where the worshiping of Tammuz was tied to the worship of the sun. In Ezekiel 8, continuing in verse 16, then he brought me into the inner court of Yahweh's house. Behold, at the entrance to the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs to the temple of Yahweh, and their faces toward the east. They were prostrating themselves eastward toward the sun. And he said, how many of you all had sunrise services on this? Woo! I wonder why. I wonder where that came from. He said to me, do you see this, son of man? Is it too light a thing for the house of Judah to commit the abomination which they committed here? That they filled the land with violence and provoked me completely or repeatedly? For behold, they're putting the twig to their nose. That's their mocking. That's what that means. Therefore I indeed shall deal in wrath. My eye will have no pity, nor shall I spare. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet I shall not listen to them. The title the Roman Church gives to Mary. What does the Roman Church call Mary? Call her Mother of God, and what else? Queen of Heaven. Ancient Babylon used that title to describe the mother of Tammuz 500 years before Messiah. Jeremiah 44, verse 17. But rather we will certainly carry out every word that has proceeded from our mouths by burning sacrifices to the Queen of Heaven and pouring out libations to her, just as we ourselves, our forefathers, our kings, and our princes did in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then we had plenty of food, were well off, and saw no misfortune. The worship of the mother and the baby, that has Babylonian origins. The idea of a celibate nunnery that came from the pagan practices of the Vestal virgins in ancient Babylon. The origin of Sunday worship is rooted in paganism. This is the sources to Tertullian ad nations. Do not many among you, pagans, with an affection of sometimes worshiping the heavenly bodies, likewise move your lips in the direction of the sunrise? It's you, at all events, who have even admitted the sun into the calendar of the week. You selected this day, its day, Sunday, in preference to the preceding day, as the most suitable in the week for either an entire abstinence from the bath, or for its postponement till the evening, or for taking rest or for banqueting. By resorting to these customs, you deliberately deviate from your own religious rights to those of strangers. There's no evidence in the early years of what we would call, let's say, apostolic Christianity, that first century, that there was any formal observance of Sunday as a day of rest, or any general cessation of work, or anything sacred being about it. The first writer who mentions the name of Sunday as applicable to the Lord's Day is Justin Martyr. This designation of the first day of the week, which is often of heathen origin, had come into general use in the Roman world shortly before Justin wrote. All these things that first came from ancient Babylon, the mother of harlots, are practiced by the Roman Catholic Church and the many other Christian denominations. Now, there have been reformations to where some of these things that the Roman Church adopted, they've rejected, but they all agree with a lot of them. How does, for instance, the Baptist Church know when Easter is supposed to be? That's determined by the Catholic Church. Listen to the Pope, which is the will. Well, most all the things originated hundreds of years before the time of Messiah, but Yeshua didn't practice or encourage any of them. As a matter of fact, he condemned the importance of assigning to this kind of tradition. They're condemned in other parts of Scripture also. We see in Colossians 2, verse 8, Paul writes, "See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ." 1 Peter 1, verses 18 and 19, knowing that you were not redeemed with perishable things like silver or gold from your futile way of life inherited from your forefathers, but with precious blood as of a lamb, unblemished and spotless, the blood of Messiah. Now, earlier in my life, I was fooled into just believing we need to listen to people that are learned in these things far beyond what we are. And we need to follow them, follow those conditions. That's what's important. That's what Jesus would want. They went to school to get their degrees. Sure. Sure, if you're sick, you go to a doctor who's learned in that. We're responsible for learning His Word ourselves. Not from what other people say about it. His Word is not just, to learn His Word is His work. It's not easy. Boy, it's sure worth it though to put the time in and do just that. Don't be taken in with empty deception or traditions. The practice of a celibate priesthood came from the Buddhists and Hindus hundreds of years before Messiah. Confessions of Babylonian priests were used to obtain information and hold tight control on the people. Prayers to the dead, purgatory, mystery, superstition, idolatry, ignorance of the followers, priesthood, Sunday worship, all has its roots in ancient Babylon. All of it does. Okay, we told several things about her. She sits upon many waters. The many waters means she controls many peoples, nations, and tongues. Just a few verses down, which we'll get to. Revelation 17, verse 15, He said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.